wild, bro. We started a podcast.
This is crazy, brother.
This is nuts. And I'm not even going to lie. I just want to be transparent. I think that's one thing we should do up front is just establish like transparency and just be real with everybody listening. This is take 2. This is number 2. We tried recording this a few days ago, and we're learning.
We ran into some technical difficulties.
First time doing a podcast. We don't know what we're doing. So we getting there. So hopefully this one will be better. Not hopefully, this one's gonna be better because we worked out the kinks. So
yeah,
we're back. But yeah, we're here, man.
Yeah,
we started this podcast. I kind of want to title this episode "The Mulligan."
I like
because I know you play golf.
I do a little bit. A little bit.
I thought you might like.
I like that a lot, actually. I like that.
The Mulligan.
I like that,
man. All right, man.
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah, bro. What's up,
man? Welcome to the Kingdom Blueprint podcast.
The Kingdom Blueprint. It's real now.
It's real
you
now.
Put the title out there too.
It's there.
It's real, man. So what are we doing? Let's back up. Obviously, we're already talking. What are we doing here? Who are you? What's your name, bro?
Well, my name is Sean, but for the purposes of everything, my nickname is Smart. So we're gonna go with Smart.
There we go.
So my name is Smart. You can feel free to call me Smart or Sean, whatever you feel to call me. But yeah.
I just want to say you introduce, like, the first time I met you, you introduced yourself as Smart. So the Sean thing is...
Yeah. I think it just depends on where I met people. So if I met people at my job or at church, I'm probably Smart unless my wife introduces me.
Okay.
If she introduces me, for sure, Sean.
That's a fact. Because one thing, I don't think I've heard your wife call you Smart.
Refuses.
To this day.
No, she won't call me Smart.
I've known you for like, dang, this is like year 6, bro. This 2025?
2025.
Yeah, I have not heard her say Smart.
Yeah, she like won't. She won't call me Smart. She refuses. But yeah.
Shout out to her.
Yeah.
And this is special too. I'm not gonna lie because and we'll establish this, but I feel like this episode is special because it's like a family thing. Like we both got the families here.
Yeah.
Your wife and daughter and son are in the other room. My wife and daughter in the other room. Special moment.
Special moment. So yeah, who are you though?
My name is Dom, and that's my actual name. I don't have my name's actually Dominic, so I guess technically I am shortening or changing my name. My name is Dom, and I'm just a regular guy, man. I'm a husband. I'm a dad, as I mentioned. I'm a follower of Jesus. And other than that, I'm no different than anybody else. So, yeah, man.
I mean, same, man. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a brother. I'm a follower of Christ. I'm a barber by trade. Yeah. That's us. That's who we are. And, man, what is this podcast?
Yeah,
what are we here to do?
Yeah, great question. So the Kingdom Blueprint, like you established, and the reasoning behind that name is because, this isn't to say, I think when people hear the blueprint, people think they're gonna give us a blueprint. They're gonna, they're the ones kind of creating it. No, that's not what this is. This isn't to say that we have the blueprint.
Right. This
is to say that we follow the blueprint, which we believe is first and foremost God. And his, sending his son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sins, right? And the ultimate blueprint being the Bible, the word of God, right? So Kingdom Blueprint, because this is going to be about all things Christ-centered, and it's going to be about day-to-day life, right? Bunch of topics we'll jump into. I'm excited for the very next topic we're going to jump into, but right now, we're just warming up.
We just warming up.
All things Christ-centered. We'll be talking about our lives. We have a lot in common, which is I know one of the main reasons we wanted to start this.
For sure.
We'll kind of jump in and talk about that, but I think it's gonna. I hope it's gonna bless some people.
Me too, man. I really do, and I think I think I could jump to that. One of the visions and things that I had in mind for this was who do we want this to impact? Who do we want to reach? And
I
think we talked about a little bit is for me is we have people in our lives that maybe we lost contact with, or family members that we don't get to see on a regular. We only see during birthdays, holidays, and not being able to have certain conversations. And you grow up and people don't, day-to-day lives, people don't really know what your day-to-day life looks like or why you do the things that you do.
Right.
And I think one of my heart behind this was to allow, family members that I don't get to talk to on a regular basis kind of get a look into our lives and what that looks like to kind of live a life that's, set apart for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And hope that they can take away something from this. And obviously we want to reach people outside that sphere. But I think my heart initially was like, man, who are the people in our circles that don't know Jesus the way that we know Jesus?
Yeah.
And for them to get a little bit of insight and kind of hear our heart a little bit.
Yeah. And no, I mean, same. And we've obviously talked about this a lot, but giving some of the insight that we have, and maybe this will be a peek into like our brains and the way we're wired. Because obviously, especially for the friends and family, like you alluded to, it's the same for me that we have that aren't believers, right? There's always the question of like why we go so hard for church now,
right.
or just why and how we move the way that we move now. So
yeah,
we especially in passing, you can't really explain all of that in a one-time dinner or hangout or whatever. So being able to do something like this, hopefully people will get insight into why we do move the way we move. And honestly, that's just all glory to God and the changes that I know He's made in my life, He's made in your life.
For sure.
And we
don't have those conversations at Christmas dinner.
Nah. No, or in the text message group thread. It's not, we're not.
Doesn't work. It don't work.
I've tried. Me too. It's funny. I've turned into the person. I'm the one in the thread sending the scriptures now. And it's funny because I used to clown that person. I'm like, stop sending me mass scriptures. To this day, my grandma does that. She'll send out just mass.
That's how I said Gmail though.
For real. She'll send out a mass group text with the most random cousins in there that I ain't even talked to. I'm like, I don't even know how you have their number.
Planted those seeds though.
But just like a either a word or like, either a word or like a scripture to everybody. And I'm like, this is cool. And I used to clown that, but now I'm like that person. I don't, not random people, but.
Yeah, I will hope not. I will hope not. Just a random number that you just pulled out. Like, let me just send this text to
everybody in my contacts. Nah, so, but yeah, so, I think that's the vision. And honestly, being able to share Jesus, like I think this is, for us, a platform to share the gospel, right? The Great Commission is to go and make disciples.
Yeah.
We want to be able to share the gospel. And I think this is one way to do that. Obviously, there's a multitude of ways to do that. But for us, we're hoping that this will be a way to do that. So there's going to be a lot of Bible talk, a lot of theology on this podcast. So looking forward to that. But same, man. I think, being wanting to reach people that, are in my circle or extended family or network, and just share the light of Jesus. So yeah.
Good. I guess my next thing would be like, man, how did we get here, bro? Like, how did the before the podcast, man, before the vision of the podcast, this friendship that we've been able to build, man, like
taking it back.
Yeah, how did we get here?
Man, like I said earlier, I didn't realize this was like year 6, bro. But yeah, about 6 years ago. And well, we might as well, let's take it all the way back. So, I started attending a church called the Father's House San Francisco. Shout out to TFA San Francisco. And, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, shout out to God. We started attending together, and I want to say day one, we walked up to the front porch. We had been looking for a church, so we had tried some other churches before that. So we had heard about this new church that just opened up called the Father's House San Francisco. We're like, let's try it out. So our first time visiting, we're walking up those front steps, and there's this, just some amazing people just on those steps, smiling, greeting people. And you were one of those people. You introduced yourself. I don't even know if you remember that, but you introduced yourself, welcomed us in.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you were one of you probably don't even.
Was it in the
that.
garage? Or was it up front?
I think it was actually on the front porch.
Okay.
I think it was there were people down in the garage. Shout out to the guest team. I know now that was the guest team. At the time, I thought it was just people just jumping in being nice. Man, everybody's so friendly here. Nah, but shout out to the guest team at the Father's House, right? Being there to greet people and make people feel welcome. But so there were people in the garage, but you were on the front porch. So you walked us in, introduced yourself, and then that was it. I didn't think anything of it because I don't even think it was a long interaction.
No, probably
But
not.
That was it. That was it. And then fast forward, I guess maybe a few months once we kind of really knew we were going to make that our home church. I feel like, we would just kind of see each other around, say what's up.
Yeah. I just remember like seeing you guys like pop in here and there. And then I was like, okay, now they're coming. Like, and out the gate, this cat would come super fly, just geared up. So it's like, you kind of remember those people like, all right, this cat is dressing up. He knows about fashion. So it's like, I'm gonna meet this cat and I'm gonna know him.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys came, and then I think
you were really like, it's other black people here. I gotta.
Let's just call a spade a spade.
Let's
call a spade a spade, okay?
Listen, man, we're in a very diverse church. When we first got started, it was small. It was small. Different type of crowd.
Yeah,
but
we here now.
we
here now.
We good.
But and one of the big ones I remember was, if I'm not mistaken, your baptism.
Yeah,
I think it was your baptism, and if I'm not mistaken, on your baptism, you also did something that was kind of extravagant.
Kind of wild.
And you proposed.
I did.
On stage.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, was a moment where, like, after that, I feel like is when I really got to like start to know you and like meet you after that day.
Yeah.
'Cause I remember in between the baptism, shout out to Pastor Tim. He was like, "Oh yeah, like he's about to propose right now on stage after this baptism." And I think like that initial interaction was like, okay, like was kind of like the catalyst to like the friendship.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That was wild. I still look back on those pictures and videos and I'm like, what was I thinking?
That was crazy.
Yeah. Also, too, at the time, I was also looking for a new barber.
That's right.
And then I found out you were a barber.
That's right.
And I think I just booked an appointment or I hit you up or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember that interaction, but then that's when the rest was history. Sitting in your chair and then coming to the shop for the first time.
Yeah.
And then like off the bat, man, we just had like some really good conversations at the shop.
Yeah, I think that's when like really we started to see like a lot of like similarities.
Yeah.
I think just in our lives, like relationally with, at our wives, like just our story in general was very similar.
Yeah.
And then, those conversations at the barbershop, I just felt like it didn't matter what we were talking about. We can be talking about sports. We can be talking about whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I just feel like there was just this, like, it was always going to like funnel back to Jesus.
Yeah.
And like, those were some like, we've always had some really good conversations at the barbershop, which has been super dope.
Some deep conversations too.
Deep conversations at the barbershop, which I'm super thankful for, that like I'm able to work at a barbershop where that space was allowed.
Yeah. Because it's not all believers in there that you work with.
It's not all believers.
Clients,
no,
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
And like, if I'm being honest, like a barbershop is not the most like Jesus friendly place.
Nah, especially. Yeah.
Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like it's not.
I was gonna say, especially when it's like, us and people of color, like especially in different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. I grew up going to barbershops in like East Oakland and like Bayview. So they conversations not about
Jesus so be able to have those conversations and people not like lose it or like feel uncomfortable, like and we did it with respect too and not like, force anybody into a conversation.
Right.
But I think that was like you said, a huge turning point and like pivotal moment. And then, fast forward, we lead a couples group.
Yeah. Shout out to the wives.
Shout out to the wives.
Shout out to our wives.
I mean, even them like, jumping into something that is out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And, allowing us to lead and be like, hey, we want to start this couples group. And I feel like that was a lot of growth there too, just
for sure
leading people and making sure that we were, on the same page and like praying for one another more specifically. And and then now we co-leading the men's group.
Yep.
Now still.
Yep.
And like seeing the friendship and the growth and even just in this, like, this kind of popped up out of conversation.
Yeah, some of those barbershop conversations too. I think. And just even to back up, like to give people even more context, I feel like one thing that we noticed on there was kind of like almost eerie was that we have a lot, like we realized we had a lot in common too, just in general, like little things too, like from how we were raised, single moms.
Yeah.
Dad kind of, well, for me, inconsistent. Your dad not there.
Non-existent.
Yeah. We'll get into that. but even like as we got older, right? Like life decisions, life choices, both, you know, the dating our wives, right? Kind of being in that girlfriend stage for probably longer than we should have been. Definitely for me, I'll speak for myself.
Oh, so a lot longer.
Yeah. Same.
We did not should have.
Same. But like that was one weird thing we had in common. We both dated them long term before finally coming to our senses and marrying them. But I think even that journey was unique because that was something again that like we off top we already kind of knew like what went into that, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we didn't even really talk much about, I mean, we have kind of talked about our stories there, but like I think too naturally there was kind of like we kind of know some of the ins and outs of like what goes into that because of you know, we both been through it. And then obviously both, you know, being husbands.
Yeah.
And then you were a dad first. You had a daughter.
Had a daughter.
And then I became a dad and I also had a daughter. So then we had that in common.
Yep. I was even thinking like even even before the kids, like I think we were both in our relationships for a long time just in the world.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we have this like in common where like we dated for a long time without having Christ in the center of our relationships, and then came to Christ and was able to walk it out with the Lord in the middle of it, and like actually see what that looks like, and then get married, and then have our daughters, and you allow me to, you know, do that first, so you know you go ahead and try that, you know how that goes.
I had to see what this kid life was all about, so I just watched you for a little bit for a couple of years, and then mine came out. Mine came out like a new Jordan release. My daughter dropped in 2022. You know, limited edition. But yeah. So we realized we had a lot in common, I think, early on. And I think that's even what sparked a lot of our conversations naturally because they just flowed. They weren't forced.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to 2020. When did you drop your fatherhood tapes? I like to call them on Instagram.
The fatherhood, the fatherlessness tapes. Tapes. Oh man, I think those were 20 either the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024.
Yeah.
I think. And that was again based off of, you know, a barbershop conversation. And you were like, man, I think you should definitely like put those out.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is even that what inspired that. There was a couple times where you actually like posted some stuff on Instagram, like on like a story or you actually made a post. I think I want to do that more because you kind of just sharing your heart a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you did one where you talked about like if I had ever like offended you or hurt you at one point, and I was like, dang, that was like super powerful.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, now that would be dope. Like I should do that. And then in typical smart fashion, I was like, nah, let me just run from that. I don't want to do that.
But then you got on there and got vulnerable though and talked about your daddy issues.
That was crazy. And then I think, and then after that, it was like, hey, like, yo, we should, that could be a podcast.
Yeah.
And then at the barbershop, I was like, hey, I'll do a podcast, but you got to be on it though.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not doing a podcast by myself.
Yeah, because literally I was just like, because I feel like you got such good traction on those videos. I was like, man, this should be a podcast. Plus, you already naturally a good communicator. Like I've heard you speak. Seeing how you move at the barbershop with you talking to people, so I was like, this should be a podcast.
Yeah, but you know, I'll be running. I'll be on my Jonah a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I'll just be out. I'll be out. I'll be pieced out. So like for me, it was like, oh yeah, like I'll do a podcast, but I think being a little more comfortable, I was like, nah, we've had way too many good conversations. And I think that's always the thing, like, oh man, let's just have a podcast.
Yeah.
But there was something about it, and I think when you have peace about something, I think
that's good.
it's something to really at least like, hey, let me just invest in this. Let me pray into this. And I think we were good about that. It's like, hey, let's not necessarily rush it, but if it is something that like we're gonna do, like, all right, God, like, give me peace. And I think we got to a point where it made sense.
I like that.
We're prayerful, and now we here.
Now we here.
And we're here. And shouts out to like the people that not only held us accountable, but were also willing to invest their time. So
right.
Like even right now, like behind the scenes, man, like a big shout out to Los and Matt, who were willing to like, all right, let's make it happen.
Yeah.
So man, big shouts out to the team that's behind the camera. Like
definitely.
Without them, we're not here.
Yeah.
Sitting on this couch doing a podcast.
At all. So. We can't do that. I mean, we're literally just sitting on the couch talking to a microphone. So yeah. Shout out to you guys.
But big shouts out to them.
Shout out to you guys. Also big shout out to we just to take it back a little bit, just to backtrack a bit, and we'll move on. But also want to give a big shout out to our pastors. Yeah, because we mentioned that we met at our church, but that church wouldn't exist without the yes of our leaders, of our two pastors who moved out from their hometown, came to San Francisco with nothing more than a dream from God and a word from God, and said yes to Him and planted a church. And that's where all of this started in terms of our community. We met at that church. Like you mentioned, Los and Matt, who were behind the camera, behind the audio. This whole thing is because of our community. Yeah. That started there. So big shout out to them. And, just want to give y'all flowers because there's so much I can say. I'll let you jump in.
I'm gonna look. Let's look at them real quick.
We can just look at Make it
this is personal.
For you guys. I hope you watch this. You better watch it.
This is for our fearless leaders, man. Like Tim and Robin. Like we are so grateful for y'all to have said yes and created a space and was obedient to what God had for the city of San Francisco. Like so, from the bottom of our hearts, man. Like thank y'all so much. Yeah. We appreciate y'all. There's not gonna ever be enough words to say that'll do it justice, but we're so appreciative of you guys. Thank y'all so much. But shouts out Tim and Robin. Yeah,
big shout out to you guys. A lot of lives were changed, and I hope that doesn't go unseen. And I know you guys are obviously always give God the glory, and rightfully so. And this is all to His glory. But He did ask something of you guys to come out here and to shake up your lives. And you said yes. You could have said no. God's purposes would have prevailed. He would have used somebody else, but He used you guys because you guys said yes and you guys were willing. And what you built here is having a real kingdom impact. So shout out to you guys. We thank you. I'll speak for myself. My life was changed because of this community, because of what's here. So, thank you. We love you. And that's it. Had to get that. I couldn't skip past.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? This this would not at all. This would not be a thing without the community that they allowed to grow. Seriously. So shouts out to them.
Seriously. Big shout out to, I'm just going to address the elephant or the Maltese poodle in the room who wants to sit by me. Shout out to my dog Bash, who this is his podcast. We're just going to feature him now. He's the third.
This is his podcast.
Yeah, he's the third co-host. Yeah. But,
we're just here.
We're just here. It is what it is. But, man, I feel like we talked a lot. Let's jump into, we got a few questions on here. We can kind of keep this going. The first one on there, I know we already talked about kind of what inspired this podcast, but I know one thing that I've been wanting to talk about, and we've obviously talked about it a lot, but I think because it's going to be the basis of this entire thing, we got to talk about faith, man. We got to talk about Jesus. I think maybe just a little bit, right?
Just a
little bit.
Nah, maybe just like this much.
Nah, but so when we think about faith, when you think about Christianity, when you think about, this journey, I'll ask you first, what does that mean to you, and how would you say it shapes your life?
Man, I think it's literally everything. Like Jesus has really been everything, and I don't think I wouldn't be sitting here, and my life, I don't know what my life would have looked like without it, and I'm just super grateful for some people that I had in my life that were, I guess, persistent, and I can only say it was like just prayer. Like they had to have been praying.
Yeah.
But like, man, and big shout out to Q, man. Like
shout out Q Cutright.
That's out Q Cutright, man. Like it's someone that I knew for a lot of my life that I had the honor of being able to work with for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'll say like, man, he kind of discipled me.
Yeah.
In the beginning. And I think he just stayed prayed up. And
yeah, that's
I think that just that alone and seeing him and seeing his walk, and that was huge for me. And now like looking back, like, man, like my faith, like just in God and in Jesus and the cross is everything. And I think, and like even my family, like I was just seeing God move.
Yeah.
Like I seen God move so much that you can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
Like
right.
I've tasted and seen.
Facts.
Bro, like
Same.
I've legit tasted and seen.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's the foundation. It's everything. It's I built my life on it.
Yeah. No, that's good.
And that's it. Like it's hard to even put it in words because I'm in awe.
Yeah. Nah, I like what you said about like building your life around it and it being hard to put in words because it's like it's become like intertwined with life. It's become more of a lifestyle. And I've said this too, like I don't know how people do life without Jesus. I really don't. And I know there's people doing life every day without Jesus, which I can argue that you're really not. I could argue that God is still just having the grace over your life, even though you don't know him, because God is sovereign.
Come on.
And he loves everybody, not just people who love him back. But I don't want to get too deep right now. We got to say some episodes.
Crazy.
So I could definitely make the argument that even when you're far from God, God is never far from you because he can't be, because he created this whole thing and he's here. And I look at my own life and there's things that before I was following Jesus that I shouldn't have made it out of. But again, that just speaks to the grace that he had on me before I was even anywhere near him. But yeah, again, I'm not gonna get too deep on that. That'll preach though. We might have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean it. Like now that I'm on this side, I don't know how people get through without Jesus, because again, I've tasted and I've seen, just like you said, and I wouldn't even want to do it any differently now. Like when I think about my faith, I think about like the origin story of it, and I'm super, super grateful to two key people in my life, and that's one, my mother, Christy Selena Blakey, who's no longer with us. She died when I was 16 years old. And then her mother, my grandmother, who is still with me, thank God. The two of them laid the foundation. So my mom was a single mom. So I spent, and I was her only child. So I spent the majority of my time growing up with her and just seeing her walk. Like first and foremost, she was a strong woman of God, prayer warrior. We were at church every Sunday. And then if you know anything about like how black churches work, you also had church on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, every day.
Every day.
I was in church a lot.
Every day.
But with that, it wasn't even just about being at a church service, like even outside of church, like at home, I saw my mom up close. I got to see, her actually praying like out loud, like first thing in the morning, middle of the day, at night. I saw her in her Bible, right? Like I saw, right? Like I remember her being on phone calls with other people, whether it was friends, family, and she's praying, right? Like I remember waking up Saturday mornings and she's playing worship music in the house while I clean it up. So there was like this lifestyle that she cultivated that even though I didn't understand it, I thought it was weird at the time. I get it a lot more now. But it's because of that foundation that I knew, I knew God from a young age. And then my grandma, same, right? Like my mom obviously got that from her mom, my grandmother, and exact same. When I'm at grandma's house on the weekends or, wherever, it's exact same, right? She's praying even more so. She's speaking in tongues. I'm like, what is she doing? Speaking in another language. She's doing all of the things. She's waking me up first thing in the morning, like praying. We're again at church first thing in the morning, right? When I'm at her house on the weekends, again, we're in Sunday school at her church. So also too strong, like prayer warrior, like same, like when we weren't at church, we were at her house, like I'm hearing and seeing her pray and all of the things, like she's praying for me, even when I'm far from Jesus at a younger age, like she's still speaking into me. So that foundation I definitely owe to them, because as I got older, and especially when my mom died and I turned away from my faith, I always say that, like, when I kind of hit that spiritual rock bottom, and there wasn't like some major catalyst that turned me into Jesus. Like, some people I feel like have like these amazing, crazy stories where there's this major catalyst. Maybe it was addiction or accident or something that made them see the light. Like, I can't really say like my story is like that turned me to Jesus, but just being at a point in my life where I felt like everything was meaningless and I'm just wandering and kind of at like a spiritual rock bottom, I'll call it. And so I knew where to turn. I knew I could pray again.
Oh, that's good.
Because I had that foundation laid. Shout out to my mother and my grandmother who laid that foundation for me, because I often tell people, like, I credit them for me being on this journey now. Like, I wouldn't be here on this journey if it wasn't for the foundation they laid. So shout out to them. And I've got to thank my grandma. I've actually had the conversation with her, and I've gotten to thank her for the, not only the example, but also all of the prayers. Because like you mentioned, having somebody praying for you is key.
Man, just like, those deposits, man.
Yeah. And I like, it can't go understated too, like how much prayer works, and also how important it is to have somebody praying for you. And likewise, for those of us who are believers, to pray for those around us, because prayer works, right? So to everybody, pray for your people. Keep praying. Pray for your kids. My grandma prayed for me for years. Like, I didn't really like fully commit my life to God till I was about 27, 28, right? So late 20s. I'm 32, almost 33 now, right? So you're talking for 10, 15, 20 years, right? From me being a kid to adulthood, my grandma was praying. So she was persistent. So keep praying.
Yeah, I like, just to kind of veer a little bit, it's so crazy. Like, your story, obviously, is just a little bit different than mine. Like, you grew up in a Christian home. You had, mom and grandma. I came from a Catholic background. Mm-hmm. So it was very much like you went to catechism, you went to, Christmas and Easter, like those are the services. Yeah. And like, it just reminds me of, like, man, your story is like, man, like, raise your kids in the ways of the Lord. And like, and then also, like, on the flip side of that, it's like how faithful God is, that we could be on two separate sides. And like you said earlier, whether you are a follower of Jesus or not, like, he loves you so much that he's gonna continue to, like, seek. Like, he's gonna draw near to you. But it's like, yeah, man, like, it was so different for me, like, not seeing that growing up, not having somebody, like, in the morning praying, but God is still faithful. Yeah. And he still met me when I needed to meet him. Yeah. And, like, allowing that process, or using somebody else to, like, plant those seeds. Yeah. And the full circle moment is, it wasn't necessarily a parent. It was someone that's a brother to me in Q. But you fast forward a little bit, and on Mother's Day, I got to baptize my mom.
Wild.
Who is now
wild.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's just, that's why I say, like, no, like, tasted and seen too much, seen God move too much for it to be like, no, it's like, it's not real, or so it's
there's no convincing me that God is not real,
right,
at all.
And that was like a little bit of a random little.
No, I feel you, and I appreciate you for sharing that. And and it's cool to just see, like, because I've seen a little bit of that recent journey, right? Like, you baptizing your mom, and your sisters were baptized. Yeah. Man, the whole family, I think, at this point is
low key.
Yeah.
Low key.
Man, at the church, serving there.
Yep.
Man, it's been cool to kind of see that journey. That little piece of, like, your family's larger journey, and just seeing how God is faithful. But I think it's cool how you kind of alluded to, like, it almost, like, kind of started with you in a sense, right? Like, God used that to kind of, and use you to kind of help lead all of your family back to him.
Yeah. And that's Super scary though.
Yeah.
And like kind of weird at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like it's weird. It's just a weird feeling. Like, and it has nothing to do with me. I'm not any more special than the next person. But I think just allowing God to move, and I think sometimes just getting out of the way and just allowing God
That's
to be
good.
God.
That's good.
Because we all know, like, you first kind of get saved and you're a little overzealous.
Yeah.
You got a lot of zeal.
Yeah.
And like you kind of want things to happen when you want them to happen.
Yeah.
And I had to
That's
learn,
good.
like, hey, like I'm not him.
Right.
Like that's the phrase now, right? I'm him.
Yeah, I'm him.
Like, I'm really not him.
I'm him.
Like I'm really not him. And like just
I like
allowing
that.
God to be God. But yeah, man, he's super faithful. I'll probably say that a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
Like that's probably like my go-to. Like God is so faithful.
He is.
And I don't ever get tired of saying that.
He
He's
is.
faithful.
Yeah, nah,
Okay.
he is. Yeah, nah, I'm excited to dive into the word.
Me too.
Like I know we're gonna jump into the word a lot on this
For
podcast,
sure.
which is actually a good segue because one of the next questions was, what topics are you most excited to cover? What are we gonna be talking about
Man,
on the Kingdom Blueprint?
I think our next episode
Yeah,
is on fatherhood,
yeah,
and that's probably right now probably the most excited I am to talk about.
yeah.
I think there's gonna be a lot of emotion.
Yeah, I
Like-
feel like you already pre-crying thinking about it. You already thinking
Yeah.
about the tears
Yeah.
that are about to.
So like, yeah, I'm probably gonna cry
Yeah.
for sure. That's what you're gonna learn. I'm a
Yeah.
crier.
yeah,
But yeah, I think
Sorry, this is
fatherhood.
a safe
man,
space.
fatherhood, I think, is a big one. I think both of our stories are very similar, and I think that we got, what do we say? We got shared trauma.
Yeah, we're gonna do some trauma bonding.
We got trauma
on this.
bonding. We
We're
got
gonna do
trauma
some
bonding.
real-time trauma bonding.
Yeah,
so
so I think
be prepared.
yeah, that one I'm super excited just because of I think where we're both at
Right.
in our lives right now. And I think to see where we came from and to be
Yeah.
able to have that conversation, I think, I hope, man, I hope that like, that speaks life into some people
Yeah,
and like that maybe
yeah.
have walked through something similar. I know it's not necessarily the easiest topic for, men to talk about and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that one I'm super excited about. I'm super excited to have a conversation with you about fashion.
Yeah. We'll nerd out about
Yeah,
fashion a little bit.
only
Yeah.
because again, it's another space when we talk about like the fashion space. It's not the most like Jesus welcoming
Right.
environment and
Right.
kind of what that looks like and your process and how you continue to keep, Jesus at the forefront of that
Mhm.
and not compromise who God is. In a sense of like, oh, I'm just going to create something, but I'm going to compromise God. And I've always
Yeah.
admired that.
Yeah.
Like with whatever you created, you've done things with a certain level of excellence and you've allowed God to also have his way in that. So I'm super excited about that. And just some of the guests.
Yeah, some of the
guests.
guests for sure. I think that's one of our visions too. Is we'll have some conversations, of course, with just us too, but we're also excited to welcome on a handful of guests who are experts in their respective fields.
Yeah.
We won't name drop just
Not
yet,
yet.
but there's some people on here who a couple of which who have already agreed to do this.
Yeah.
So we're off on the right foot. But
Yeah.
we're excited to have some really good conversations with some people who we really think are gonna bless everyone listening. They've all kind of like blessed us in terms of our lives and continue to. These are people like that are in our community today. So yeah, definitely excited about that and diving into some of those topics with them, hearing about their journeys, their stories, and their different, respective fields, right? We're talking about people who are mental health specialists. We're talking about people who are therapists, people who are pastors, leaders, executives at their respective companies and things like that. So entrepreneurs,
small business owners.
yeah, all of the things. So again, shout out to community.
Yeah. And a lot of those people are in our church community.
Yeah, a lot of those people are in our current church community, or have even come from other church communities, right? So
churches,
just a
yep.
testament, again, not only to again our community, which again shout out to our church, but also just the Big C church as a whole, and what Jesus' whole plan was for this, right? Because I think a lot of our closest folks are from church community. So looking forward to some of those conversations.
Yeah.
I'm also looking forward to again just diving into the word, like we mentioned. doing some like theological studies and you know, maybe some mini sermons.
Little sermonettes.
You know, little sermonettes, definitely.
Yeah.
But also too, just talking about navigating, going back to the thing about like work, right? How we navigate day to day in spaces that aren't necessarily Jesus centered, because neither one of us work in, we don't work in church settings or Jesus centered settings. So talking about how we navigate those spaces while still maintaining integrity, but also being bold too, and not being able to. I think there's on the one hand, you can maintain your integrity and like, you know what I mean, not compromise your faith. But then on another hand, I think there's like a step further, you go and actually being bold.
Yeah.
Right. Even in your work setting and being able to share the gospel or speak to people about Jesus. I've seen you do that really well just at the bar. I mean, you work at a barbershop, right? So I know that it's all kind of people that come in.
Yeah.
And you haven't shied away from those conversations. So I'm curious to talk to you about that and like hear your mindset.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, you know, we'll obviously share more of our stories as this goes on. I'm eager to hear, it's like for all of y'all to hear from him, because this man is a great communicator. He's great at also bringing people together. That's the one thing. Yeah, I gotta say that. I know I said that before, but I'll say it again. Like you're really good at like, one thing I've always admired about you is you people are just kind of like gravitate. I feel like, and I think you're good at not only stewarding that, but you also bring people together. You create space for people to just be at home. I joked the other day it's always somebody at your house. Like it's always at least one visitor there, and there could be like 1 or 2 people there, or it could be like 20 people there, and but it feels the same. It feels like home. You know, you guys do a really good job. You and your wife. Shout out Dim.
Yeah,
I won't say her full name.
Yeah, that's
you know
that's.
but,
I can't even take full credit for that. That's Dim, man. She's amazing, man. She's one of the most like hospitable people I know, making people feel comfortable. But I can say the same for you, man. I'm excited to have, you know, deep conversation. I think the people are gonna be. I just get ready because Dom got stuff that he's just gonna unload, man, and I'm super excited for that. I think I'm blown away every time we have a conversation because I feel like I get just nugget after nugget, and I mean same thing, man. We're in your living room right now. And you've always made it feel like home. And we just joked off camera before, man. Like you said, like, I love to just feed people. Yeah. And I'm like, my man feed people and feeds people though. So like, like not only is he going to give you food like for your stomach, but he's going to give you food for your spirit. And I'm super excited.
Big words. Thank you. That's man. Wow. Thank you.
Super excited for that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, this is going to be good. This is going to be good, man. We're excited. Just everybody listening and watching, we, you know, obviously we hope this takes off, but I think more than anything, we just hope that it blesses, even if it blesses one person. So we want to hear from people too. Like definitely tap in with us, right? If there's anything that you want to talk about, hear about, if you have more questions from us, again, we would love to tackle all of that. You know, both on this podcast, but even right, like if it's one-on-one, if it's a DM, a message, whatever the case may be, definitely let us know. Let's see. Oh, this was a good one. So we kind of talked about this on a lighter note, right? What are some of your favorite podcasts right now? What are you listening to, and how have they inspired you?
Man, I think I think this is one I think most people like in I think our space is listening to, and In Totality with Megan Ashley.
Shout out to Megan Ashley and that's a good podcast.
It's probably my favorite podcast.
Yeah.
Like, she does such a good job, like, just in a whole, and the conversation, and, like, the vulnerability in some of the stuff that she talks about. And, yeah, that's one that, I mean, how it inspires us, I mean, we're on the couch right now, having a conversation in a living room. And it's not to say like, oh, like, man, I'm just gonna super rip something off, but I mean, it's so well done.
Yeah.
And so that's probably my favorite podcast right now.
Yeah.
Is In Totality.
I like that. That's a good one.
It's a good.
Shout out to my wife. She put me on that one. Shout out IT for putting me on that. That's a really good one though, for sure. I think to go along with the couch vibes, I'm a big fan of With the Perrys. Shout out to Preston Perry and Jackie Hill Perry.
Facts.
Big fans of them. Like a lot of people are. But yeah, just what they've been able to do and following their journeys for a little bit in terms of just being on fire for Jesus, being into apologetics and just really just teaching the gospel, teaching the text. I think I love that about them in terms of like just their preaching and the communication styles, but also seeing how they brought it really down to earth on their podcast, right? Just real, just easy conversations in the sense that like anybody could take something away from it. And I just love how they're able to kind of take what really could be very complex theological ideas and really kind of break them down and make them practical for folks. But without watering down or sugarcoating the gospel, right? Like I think too many people do that, unfortunately, and they don't. And yeah, again, it's they keep it simple. It's on the couch in their living room, so it also kind of takes away like the, you know what I mean? Like I think even for us going to the inspiration side of things, it makes it a bit simple, right? When it came to us like starting a podcast, like for us, it was like, man, we could just shoot this on the couch in the living room, like because you'll be fine, right? We don't have to get some studio somewhere rented out, right? So I think being able to also kind of bring things down to earth and show people that you know you can do something like this too. I think that's really where I draw inspiration from, and that's also too just how that's my mindset when it comes to fashion and creating. Like a lot of the people that inspire me in terms of designers are people that maybe didn't go the traditional route, maybe didn't go to fashion school, and still kind of broke into the industry because it makes you feel like you can do it too. So that's a good one. That's a good one. Let's transition a bit to, we talked a little bit about our hopes for this podcast and what we want people to take away. But I know we talked about this before, and I think it was a really good conversation when we talked about it, so I wanted to bring it back. But what do you want your kids to learn from this podcast? And when I say that, I don't mean like, what do we want them to learn from listening to these episodes per se, because both of our kids are young, so they're not listening to this right now or even going to understand it. But they might, you know, if this is up 5-10 years down the line, they might go back and listen to it. But also, I guess the bigger question is, what do you want them to learn from just even the fact that we're like doing this and seeing, you know, them being able to see this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, like I said earlier, I'm really good at running away from things. Like professionally, like I would just run away. I'm so good at it. And I've done it a lot. And I've done that because, and we're going to talk about it because I think a little bit of it has to do with like some dad issues.
Yeah.
But I never wanted to.
Shout out to daddy issues.
Yeah, I never wanted to like, I didn't want to fail people. Right. So I didn't want to like let people down. So for me, it was always, well, how can I self-sabotage before I fail something? Because if I mean, yeah, like at the end of the day, like I quit. Yeah. So if I quit, I didn't fail. Right. I didn't let nobody down, but I'm just gonna.
You can't say I failed because I didn't even do it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Or like I didn't do it. Not only did I quit, I just didn't do it. Or I found a way for it to just like explode. And that's with, I mean, I've done it in sports. I mean, I've done it even in ministry. Like, oh, this is what God has for you. Like, well, now I'm going to turn and run. So I don't want that. How can I sabotage this? What can I do? Should I just get up and leave? And I think for my kids, what I want them to learn is like, and what God has had to, you know, reveal and show me and, you know, kind of get before him and like, hey, God, like this is what I'm dealing with is, or it's okay. It's okay to fail at something. Yeah. But do it. Yeah. Like, for them, it's like, it's okay to like complete something. It might not look the way that you wanted it to look. Right. Might not come out the way you wanted it to come out. But don't be afraid to fail. Yeah, that's good. And like, you have people that love you regardless. And ultimately, like, God is going to be proud of you. Yeah. Like, he's the one, like, don't try to like do something for like the, like, affirmation of like,
and
you
the
know
recognition from others.
From me. Like, I don't want you to do something for me.
Yeah.
I don't want you to go and do like your aspirations for me. I'm always going to be proud of you.
Yeah.
But like ultimately just do it unto the Lord. And like, that's my thing is don't be afraid to fail.
That's
go
good.
for it.
Yeah, that's good. I think, like I mentioned to you before, mine is real similar. I think for me, I've similarly always kind of run from certain things or shied away from them for a number of things similar to you, like a fear of failure. I've always kind of struggled with insecurity and anxiety and thinking that like what I want to pursue, what I want to do, I'm not good enough, right? Like I'm, nobody's gonna listen to what I have to say or watch what I have to offer or buy what I'm selling, right? So why even try? But on the flip side of that too, as someone who considers himself a creative and who is trying to step forward into something like for the creative projects and things like that, I think on the flip side, sometimes it's also just like being overwhelmed because I have all these ideas, all these thoughts, and I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to get from point A to point B. And I'm so kind of infatuated with like the end result that I don't even know how to take the first step.
Right.
So I don't even try. I'm just going to let this sit and just not do it. Or maybe somebody else will do something similar to make it better. I get so in my head about things that it's like, okay, I'm not even going to go for it. Let's just pull back. And that's been me a lot. And I mean, I have even today, creative ideas and projects and thoughts that I want to pursue that are still sitting in here or on my laptop hard drive that I haven't pulled the trigger on. So I think a lot of it is just, not believing or in myself or feeling qualified. So with that, for me, when I think about my daughter, like I want her to know that it's okay to just take a step. It doesn't matter if things don't work out, if you fail. Because honestly, failure is just you learn from that anyway, right? So
that's good.
Just take the step because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And you don't want to live with regret. But I think the biggest thing, more than the whole follow your dreams thing, follow your heart, because I mean that I don't, we can talk about that another time. I think ultimately we're here to honor God, right?
Yeah.
And God has given us all gifts to use for His purposes. And a lot of times, the dreams and the aspirations and the creative pursuits that we have, a lot of times those are God-given, right? Like if we really sit down and talk to God and pray, like a lot of those things that we have ideas about or want to pursue are God-given. So those are things for us to pursue, right? So for me, if I'm not going after what is a God-given vision, then I'm not honoring God, right? That's the same as being disobedient. That's the same as sinning in a certain way, right? Because if God gave me a vision for something and I'm not pursuing it, then I'm basically telling him like, sure, that's a cool idea, God, but I'm not the one to do it, right?
Right.
And it's like, he's the one that created me. He's the one that gave me the vision. He's the one that gives us our gifts, right? So I think for me, it's all about like honoring God. And that's not to say like every little dream and inclination we have is from God. I think that's where discernment comes in.
For sure.
Because, a lot of times, like, those things can be twisted and we could think like something's from God, right? And I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that. But a lot of times, those things that we have on our minds and those dreams are from God, right? Yeah. So it's like, how are we thinking about that? How are we praying into them? And then allowing discernment and allowing him to kind of take lead and show us how to get there. And so for me, that's something I want to instill in my daughter early on, to know that, okay, hey, like, if you have a gift, let's cultivate it. Let's work towards it. You have a dream. Let's pray about it. Let's bring God into it.
That's good.
And don't worry about the failure or what somebody else is going to think, right? Don't worry about if it's quote unquote good or bad, because that doesn't matter. All that matters is that you took the step and trusted God, right? And just kind of, live with those results. But ultimately, like, that's what I hope, my kid and maybe potentially future kids take away from this, right? Is just the fact that you can just start where you are and just go for it. And also I hope that they also learn like the importance of community. Cause like we talked about, right? Like this idea that we're doing this podcast, right? It came because of community, not even just the logistics and getting this recorded and filmed, but like even how we talked about before, right? The accountability.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to have a dream or a vision and want to pursue something and you're just going after it solo. Like I said, I got ideas in my head or on my laptop that I haven't told anybody about that I just never pulled the trigger on. Versus something like this. This was something that we had talked about for a while. We had prayed about. But then we also shared it with some of our people, right? Like we told them the idea and the thoughts that we had. We voiced it. So now it's like once we shared it with our closest folks, there was a level of accountability because we put it out there.
Yeah.
And they followed up with us. They kept us in check, right? And then that's how this kind of came about, right? So community is important too. And that's one thing that, I definitely want my daughter and, again, potential future kids to take away.
That's good. Taking that too.
Yeah.
Taking that too, for sure.
Yeah, man.
I think just a little bit. What else also scares me about that too is like some things you talked about. Like, I think we look at, when it comes to like, I don't want to fail, we just look at something that inspires us, but we see the finished, polished product.
Right. So
like, that's also something where it's like, a podcast that inspires me, I'm looking at something that is already up and running, and I think like, man, they gotta look like that.
Right.
Day one.
Right.
My podcast gotta look exactly like that.
Yeah.
Day one. And I'm like, and so if it doesn't, I'm like, man, I'm just not gonna do it.
Right.
Not gonna do it. So that's one of the ones where I'm like, that's kind of hard too.
Yeah.
Where like the like, oh well, let me just run from it because I don't have those resources.
Right.
But not to like forget that they always didn't have those resources either.
Exactly.
And they did it.
Yeah. And a lot of times when we see these finished products, right, this is years in the making, right? Like anybody that we can point to that's at the, quote unquote, top of their game, putting out their best work, right? Wasn't overnight for them, right? You can ask anybody, like everybody's had help, but beyond that, everybody's put in work for years, right? And built on that. And, things came as years progressed, right? Where people see the end goal and they see the now and it's like, oh man, I'll never get there. It's like, but this took them 10, 15 years to get there, right?
I ain't gonna lie. I look at it with the Perrys or in totality, like, bro.
Yeah, dude, I do it all the time with like even like fashion, like being someone who makes clothes. Like, I like every time I have an idea to put something together, I'm like, but like I'm never gonna be A or B or Gucci or Louis Vuitton or this brand or that brand. And it's like, but just that doesn't have to stop you from.
And I think that's what I'm learning. What God is showing me, like, I don't want you to be them.
Yeah,
I don't. Like, we have them already.
Right.
Like, I need you to just be you.
That's good too.
I need you to just be you.
Yeah. God makes one of ones. He makes individuals.
Exactly. So it's like I had to God like, yo, like just get out of your own way.
Yeah.
And like get out of your own way and allow me to just light the path.
Yeah.
So
and trust that he has a purpose for all of our lives, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something inherent, I think, in each of us that God wants to use for his glory.
For sure.
Right. So it's not even about compare. Like you can't compare because what he's going to do in you is different than what he did in the last person.
For sure.
And it's different as what he's going to do in the next person. Right. So I think we do a disservice not only to ourselves, but to God when we compare and look at what somebody else is doing or has done.
Yeah.
So that's good. And I think tying into that question about what we want our kids to see, I think that is the beauty of this, right? Like we're starting up a podcast basically from scratch, but our kids are going to see this and be like, nah, like, let's say we are doing this in the next however many years, right? They'll be like, nah, we were in the living room.
Yeah. Like, they locked us in the room next door while they recorded the first episode.
They let the dog out there somehow, but the kids couldn't be out for some reason. Gave us some pizza and put us in the room. Nah, but they'll be able to see and hopefully remember, like, nah, they started with what they had and then it went on to something else. So
that's good, man.
That's good. That's good.
I think, only thing left, man, is just how could the people stay connected or be involved in a podcast, man?
Yeah. We definitely want people to stay connected. This is gonna be everywhere soon, everywhere you get your podcast. So obviously listen there. Subscribe if you can, but also too, like reach out to us. We're on social media. We got the Instagram now. Yeah. Stay tuned for the social media handles, but tap in with us. Like, comment on there, send DMs. We're active. That's us on the back end. We're new to this. We don't have some interns running around like managing the social media. Like that's us.
That's
if you see somebody posting, it's me and him.
Yeah.
So like tap in. Our personal handles are on Instagram too. That's our primary one right now. It's at Kingdom Blueprint Pod. But yeah, you can find us on Instagram, and again, stay tuned for other platforms. But yeah, tap in, DM, put comments, like drop comments.
Yeah,
all of the things.
We for sure gonna try to respond to everybody and do our best to keep everybody involved. But yeah, man, I feel like that's a great mulligan.
The mulligan.
The great mulligan.
The mulligan.
But yeah, man, shouts out. Appreciate you, dog.
Yeah.
First one, Kingdom Blueprint Pod, man.
Yes, sir.
Like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things. And we'll see y'all on the next episode to talk about fatherhood.
Ooh.
Peace.